What's going on, guys? Wei from Revolution here with Jeremiah Chan. How are you, sir?
Not too bad. How are you, Wei?
Very good. And guys, today we want to talk to you about one of our favorite subjects, Cartier, and about 3 Cartier watches we think that you guys should buy.
Yeah, I think we have horological history right before us. So where would you like to start with?
I'm going to start with a watch that similar to the one that I'm wearing on my wrist. So as you guys can see, I'm wearing my Tortue. This is a special order. It has a beautiful salmon, if not rosé champagne dial with burgundy numerals. And I'm going to put this right here because the watch I want to talk about is this incredible piece which was made for the 100th anniversary of the Tortue.
Yeah, the Tortue was a Louis Cartier design from 1921, right? And the original was 44.7 millimeters by 23 millimeters. And this one for the 100th anniversary, I think it's slightly different in proportion.
So the thing about this watch is, if you think about it from the context of 1921, it is absolutely game-changing, right? I mean, it is so beautifully shaped and formed and actually oversized for the era.
Correct.
It is an absolute masterwork of like Art Deco and absolute like creativity from Louis Cartier. The interesting thing about this watch is it's been made in different versions over the years. Last year they created this watch for the 100th anniversary of the Tortue, and they made 150 pieces of this watch in yellow gold. But they made several different versions of this watch. So in 2018, they also made a Tortue as well, but the construction of that watch was slightly different, which makes this watch, to me, even more special. So the watch in 2018, which is similar in construction to this, is actually slightly thicker than this. It uses also a completely different movement. The movement in this watch is a movement that is the, what caliber?
Jaeger-LeCoultre caliber 849.
And that movement is a legendary movement that's also used in the ultra-thin watches from Jaeger, known as the knife edge watches.
Yes.
Then let's talk about the construction of this. Cartier wanted to make a watch that was absolutely faithful to the original watch back in 1921. So if you look at this watch, for example, it's got a snap-on case back, and it is water resistant to 30 meters. But if you look at this watch, basically the case back slides in and is held in place by these screws. Now, as you look at the watch as well, you can see that it's absolutely stunning. And it actually differs quite considerably from the watch that was made in 2018. The vintage cues are abundant. In particular, look at the 2 different crowns. The crown on the 100th anniversary piece has a really elongated and pointed cabochon, exactly like the watches from 1921. If you look at the crown on my watch, you see it's actually quite a bit shorter and a little bit stubbier as well. Then look at the execution of the dial on this watch. It is absolutely perfect. It's got this beautiful kind of cream ecru dial that's reminiscent of a watch that has aged over 100 years, which they've done perfectly, I have to say. And on the wrist, it is incredible. It just absolutely follows the form of your wrist perfectly. And you almost forget it's there because it's so effortless to wear and it's so beautifully thin. Well, let's talk about the different types of markers that have appeared on this watch. So as you can see, these are the markers that appear on the very original watch from 1921. It's a combination of stylized Roman numerals and the famous chemin de fer or minute track, right? In 2004, CPCP, or Collection Privée Cartier Paris, created a limited edition of that watch with 50 pieces in platinum and 150 pieces in yellow gold.
Yes, that's right.
And that watch featured Arabic indexes.
Yeah, but exploded Arabic numerals.
Correct. Then the next watch in 2018, the Tortue then, featured a combination of stick markers and stylized Arabic markers for the 12 and 6. But this watch takes it back to the very origin. It goes old school, and I think it's absolutely fabulous. I want to talk about this watch from a potential investment perspective as well, right? So let's take, for example, as a frame of reference, the CPCP watches. Those watches, which were created in 2004, are now trading for fairly significant premiums. I believe the last time I saw a yellow gold full set watch, it was going for over $100,000 US.
Crazy.
But it's a beautiful watch,
it is.
right? When this watch was launched last year, which incidentally Cartier did as a complete stealth watch, I don't even remember that.
Yes, I do.
They didn't say anything to the press. The watches started to appear on the wrists of people, and they started to post it on Instagram, and it, of course, broke the internet because everyone was like, "What is this watch? I want it!" Right? As a result, the premiums on this watch in the secondary market started to explode, and they went quite considerable over their original asking price of around $30,000 US.
Yeah, I think $29,900.
$29,900 US. Now, prices seem to have adjusted and softened very slightly, and the watches are now trading in the sort of mid to high 40s, right? And I think that's a good time for you to purchase one because they seem to be available now for whatever reason. And trust me, I think they'll probably be snapped up by like Cartier collectors because Cartier collecting is at an all-time high. Right?
I mean, it's only 150 pieces. It's so rare.
And it's absolutely stunning to
on the
behold.
market.
So guys, this watch is at the Revolution Watch Bar. It's for sale by us. Come down and take a look at it, put it on your wrist, and you know, if I'm around, I'll even show you my temps cintré in comparison to this, and you can see the construction is completely different, and this is an absolute magnificent thing to have on your wrist.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take yours off.
Watch number 2 that we want to talk about is the famous Cartier Tortue monopusher chronograph.
Yeah. The Tortue shape, I think we should go all the way back to, you know, the early 1900s.
1912, actually.
1912, exactly. And it was, you know, the first 2 decades of the early 1900s. Louis Cartier was at his most prolific, right? We know 1904.
Yes.
The Santos came out, right? Commercialized in 1911. And the Bague Noir, which is the oval bathtub shape, came out in 1912 as well. And I would like to think this tonneau Tortue shape, right, it's an amalgamation of the two,
yes.
A square and also an oval.
Well, you know how it's always been described to me is the name comes from Tortue aux pattes, which is a
turtle
tortoise
on legs.
with legs,
Yeah.
right? And the legs will be represented by the lugs.
Exactly.
But it's absolutely stunning. It's also shaped, it's curved to fit the wrist perfectly. So in the 1920s, Louis Cartier started to manufacture this watch with a monopusher chronograph. This movement was made in collaboration with Jaeger-LeCoultre, or Jaeger-LeCoultre if you're French.
And they formed a collaborative or cooperative called European Watch and Clock Company.
Correct, and actually provided the movements for the majority of these watches, right?
Yeah.
So what was really interesting was that watch became a very rare and highly sought after collectible. It's a monopusher chronograph that means that the pusher is integrated into the crown and you press it once to start it, once to stop it, and once to reset it in sequence.
Right, but what's special about, you know, activating the chronograph through the crown as well, especially for Cartier, the whole crown moves. I think Longines produced a monopusher chronograph in 1913, but that one had a button inside the crown.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole idea was that Cartier was amongst the first to integrate the pusher into the crown,
Yep.
and because he was such a master of aesthetics, he would not want a pusher to mar the beauty of his Tortue case.
Exactly.
So back in 1998, they relaunched this watch with the chronograph monopusher function, but this time involving some of the most interesting people in horology. So the movement was created by THA.
Yeah, or
Technique
horologically
appliquée, right? And the 3 people behind THA were some of the most legendary people in the watch industry. In particular,
F.P. Journe.
so François-Paul Journe, Denis Flageolet of De Bethune, and Vianney Halter. And these 3 guys created a pretty extraordinary chronograph movement for the time. Bear in mind, in the context of the late 90s, very few people were making chronograph movements. I think it has actually happened even 1 year before the Langensohn datograph movement was unveiled to the world, right? In 1999.
1999, exactly.
So you have here one of the first in-house chronograph movements, and it is a beauty to behold. The configuration is super interesting to me. It's a column wheel chronograph with what I call an oscillating or sliding pinion. So which means that you have a pinion being driven directly by the seconds wheel, which incidentally is also the continuous seconds counter here in the watch at 9 o'clock. And when you activate the column wheel, a lever brings the oscillator in contact with the central chronograph wheel, which causes it to start. You press the pusher again, and it causes it to lift off of that wheel, causing it to stop with a brake function as well. And then you press it one last time, and a reset hammer comes and hits the heart cam on the chronograph wheel, and boom, you're back to 0. Now, what's also very cool about this watch was the movement was industrialized by another legend of the watch industry, none other than Carole Forestier. Carole Forestier is one of the most brilliant technical minds in watchmaking. She's at the moment working at Tag Heuer, but back in the day, she started off initially at Ulysse Nardin and actually created the original design
she was
for the Freak.
consultant for Freak on 2001.
Then she went to Renault and Papi, and in Renault and Papi, she worked on the chain infusion mechanism for the Pour le Mérite tourbillon, amongst other very significant horological achievements. She then moved over to Richemont Group and became basically the head technical honcho of Cartier for many years. So if you think about it from this perspective, this history of this watch, the significance horologically, to have Vianney Halter, Denis Flageolet, François-Paul Journe, and Carole Forestier all involved in the creation of this watch, it's absolutely amazing.
And after François-Paul left THA and started his own eponymous brand, right, he also used this oscillating pinion mechanism in his split seconds monopusher chronograph.
So in his split seconds monopusher chronograph today, he's using a version of this mechanism, which it goes to show you how well designed it was from the beginning.
Exactly.
But let's talk about this particular watch. The size for us is absolutely perfect. It is a combination of 34 mm in terms of width and lug to lug 42.5 mm. Putting it on your wrist, it fits Absolutely perfectly. I think that's just the perfect size for a dress chronograph. And a great thing about Cartier is you're able to have the inclusion of complications like a monopusher chronograph into something that's so beautifully elegant. Now, the interesting thing about this particular watch is it's manufactured in white gold and it is factory diamond set with pave diamonds by Cartier.
Right. I think there's a diamond in the cabochon as well.
There's even a diamond in the cabochon. So each time you touch the chronograph, you're in fact touching a diamond. So the cool thing is that this watch, because of the way in which the market has moved, is in fact pretty much the same price as a non-set version of this watch.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
That's what I think is really cool about it.
Wow, okay.
So if you go look, for example, on Chrono 24, the asking price for a full set, like yellow gold or even white gold monopusher chronograph by CPCP, is around the $50,000 US mark. This is actually even slightly less than that. And it's full set with factory Cartier diamonds, which, you know, to me is pretty damn compelling. If you're a guy, and you like a watch with a little bit of bling, or alternatively, if you're trying to buy your partner, your wife, your girlfriend, one of the greatest horological achievements, but also with a little bit of glamour.
You can't get better than that.
Dude, you can absolutely not get better than this. So if you're around Singapore, incidentally, and you want to come in and check out these watches in person, hit us up at
shop at revolutionmagazines.com.
Shop at revolutionmagazinesplural.com. And so watch number 3, on the subject matter of a beautiful Tortue case along with a complication, is this stunning platinum Cartier Tortue perpetual calendar.
Yeah, the reference 2646.
Reference 2646. So what's a perpetual calendar, guys? For me, it's always been the equivalent of having like a tiny genius living inside your watch who's automatically able to compensate for the shifting rhythms of the 30 and 31 day months of the year. And in addition to that, on the leap year actually knows when to add an additional day.
I think this dial layout, it's a very classic dial layout where the sub-dials are positioned at 12, 3, 6, and 9, and they give you all the calendar functions. You know, unlike some other perpetual calendars, let's say from IWC, which gives you the year, you know, in a 4-digit configuration.
Well, that was actually the interesting thing about this. So the first time I saw this perpetual calendar, which I think came out in the early 2000s, I was completely intrigued by it. First of all, I thought it was incredibly beautiful. Second, in terms of size, like I think it's perfect. It's 34 mm times in width by 42.5 mm in terms of length, times 11 mm in terms of height, which is like, hey, that's actually really thin for a perpetual calendar, right?
Yeah.
And then I started to do some investigation as to where does this perpetual calendar movement come from,
Okay.
right? So I assumed that because, you know, Cartier is part of the Richemont group, they would have taken either an IWC or a Jaeger perpetual calendar module. But in fact, they didn't, because both of those perpetual calendars have 4-digit year displays, right?
Exactly.
Especially in the context of that era, like in the early 2000s, those were the only ones that they were making, right? Now, what's interesting about this is if you look at the configuration of the subdials, it will remind you of the configuration of the subdials of another very famous perpetual calendar, which is the Royal Oak perpetual calendar.
Yes, yeah.
Because this watch is using the same module that that watch uses,
Yeah, a Duba de Prada.
which allowed Audemars Piguet to create the world's thinnest perpetual calendar back in the day, the 5548. So wearing this watch on the wrist, like again, it's an absolute expression of sublime elegance, but with this added complication of the perpetual calendar, which I love. This watch to me is a wonderful expression of elegance with like complication added to it. That's actually useful and very pragmatic, and is really embodies what a Cartier dress watch should be all about. Now, from an investment perspective, why do I think this watch is a good buy right now? Well, if you think about it from this perspective, like most guys want to have a perpetual calendar, right?
I do. Yeah,
Yes.
Eventually I hope I can afford one. Yeah.
And so for me, like, I guess one of the watches that we would all think about would be, for example, an AP, right? But as you can see, the price both on the Royal Oak and even the 5548s have started to like increase so significantly that they've become a little bit out of reach for a lot of people, right? Including me, unfortunately.
Really? Okay.
So like, this is actually a watch that I would consider, at the price point which is being offered, or which they're kind of selling at nowadays. I consider them to be extraordinary values. And you have a watch with amazing authenticity, both in terms of design and also in terms of the complication, right? So there you go, guys. Here are 3 Cartiers that we think you should buy. The 100th anniversary Tong Xin Tre, which is incidentally, this watch comes as a full set. The Cartier Tortue monopusher chronograph, but diamond set. And also this watch, the Tortue perpetual calendar, a watch that's complicated but elegant as well. So guys, if you're in Singapore and you want to check out these watches in person and even try them on, or speak to us, if we happen to be around, or have a drink with us, if it happens to be
Look forward to that.
pretty much any time in the afternoon. We're here. Hit us up at shop@revolutionmagazines.com. That's magazines plural, and we'd be happy to hang with you and talk all things Cartier with you, because it's one of our favorite subject matters.
Yeah, we love Cartier. Check these out, guys.
Peace. Thank you.
Bye.